Alright, today's video is on the 5 major world religions you need to know for world history too. Remember that we talked at the very beginning of class about the locations of those religions in the Eastern Hemisphere prior to our class starting, and this is their information for the modern world. All of it should be a review from what you learned in World History 1 last year. So if there's anything that you're confused about, be sure to highlight it, write it down, and ask me about it in class. And at this point you should have your chart out, and we'll go through each religion one by one and talk about the things on the chart. Alright, so Judaism is the first monotheistic religion that we're going to talk about. The foundation of Judaism starts with Abraham, approximately the 19th century historically, though biblically they're going to have a different date for it. Abraham was said to have had a visit from God, from the angel Gabriel, that promised him that so long as the Jewish populations followed the teachings of God, then they would inherit the promised land, which is today Israel. If you notice on our map down here, which we'll be using for the entire video, the only area you see Judaism as itself is right here in the Middle East for the country of Israel. But you should know that in the modern world there are Jews living obviously all over, but predominantly in Europe and Northern America. Alright, so the major things that you need to know for Judaism is that Abraham is a prophet who the Jews believe made a covenant with God. That covenant word means promise with God to inherit the promised land. And sorry about that. And that Moses was given the 10 Commandments later in history. Moses does a couple of things. He was the baby in the basket that gets raised by the pharaohs, and then he finds out that he's actually a Hebrew, and he leads the Hebrews out of slavery. But that he was given the 10 Commandments, which are going to guide moral and religious conduct. And obviously the end of that right there should have a and parentheses on it. The holy book for Judaism is the Torah, which particularly are the first 5 books of the Hebrew Bible, of the Christian Bible. Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. But it's going to tell the story of Abraham and the story of Moses, creation, several other things. Their symbol over here, you'll notice you already have the symbols. You don't have to draw those in, but that's the Star of David. Alright, Christianity. The one that probably you know the most about. Christianity is founded by a man named Jesus in the turn of the BC to AD, or BCE, before Common Era to Common Era time frame. You should know that Jesus is a real person. We don't dispute that as a historical fact. Jesus was alive during the Roman Empire, and the Roman Empire is actually what's credited with spreading the faith of Jesus. It is also a monotheistic religion. Again, same God as Judaism. Obviously, this is a picture of the crucifixion. This event happens historically as well. The Romans have records that they executed a man named Jesus of Nazareth on a specific day. And it's the belief that Jesus rose from the dead that separates the historical fact from the religious one. And this is obviously the nativity scene. And everything that's pink on your map, big map right here, everything that's pink, and bringing it to the front. Oops, sorry. Everything that's pink is what's going to be credited with predominantly Christianity. However, basically on your SOL, it's going to be Europe, North and South America. We don't really ask very many questions about Southern Africa or Australia. Christians believe that Jesus is a son of the one and only God, but that he is also a part of the one and only God. There is a life after death in heaven, And you need to know that early Christian officials set the doctrine or the beliefs of Christianity, which means that Jesus didn't write things down. Apostles like Paul after Jesus wrote things down, as did historical religious officials writing down what other people said Jesus said. All those things are compiled into the Bible, particularly the New Testament, which contains stories of the life and teachings of Jesus, the crucifixion story, the Easter story, things like that. Obviously, symbol of the cross. And this guy, Moses, right? He's back. He's back because the Ten Commandments are a part of Christian teachings as well. Islam is founded again by historical person Muhammad in the 6th century, which is going to be obviously 500-600 years after the death of Jesus. Muhammad was a person who lived in Saudi Arabia, which I'll point out on the map in just a minute. It spreads through the Middle East and most of northern Africa, though, of course, just like Judaism, just like Christianity, you're going to find Muslims everywhere. Again, it's a monotheistic religion. Muhammad grew from the Judeo-Christian beliefs. Muhammad's God is the same God as the Jewish and the Christian God. He just sort of adds on to it. Christianity is like Judaism 2.0, and Islam is like Judaism 3.0. This, you might remember, is the Kaaba. It's in Mecca. And around it are people praying during the Hajj. The Hajj, remember, is one of the 5 pillars. And as promised, here is the map of, didn't bring it all the way to the front, the world. And if I was going to use the pen, let me bring that up. Mecca is right around in here where it's green and you can't see it, and I can't change the colors. So that's Mecca and Medina. That's the areas that they have to travel to on the Hajj. They're going to believe in the 5 pillars. You must declare your faith, pray, and that's when we talked about 5 times a day, facing Mecca. Fasting in the month of Ramadan, not eating while the sun is up. Alms, giving charity. Just like Christians giving an offering, Christians have to tithe 10% of their earnings to the church. In Islam, it's 2.5%. And they must take the Hajj, that pilgrimage to Mecca, at least once in their lifetime. They're expected to if they're able. 3 holy cities, Mecca, Medina, and Jerusalem. Mecca is where Muhammad is from. Medina is where he sort of founds the church, gets the church growing. And in Jerusalem, they believe that Muhammad was actually ascended into heaven from where the Dome of the Rock was built, met with the prophets, God, Jesus, Abraham, Moses, spoke with them, and then brought back their teachings. The holy book for Islam is called the Quran. You're going to see it spelled both ways, which is why I have it listed both ways, though the most popular spelling is actually the Q spelling. It covers the teachings of Muhammad, but it's, again, Muhammad doesn't write things down. It's recorded by the followers of Muhammad. Here's their symbol, the crescent moon with a star, and this is obviously an old Quran. You can buy Qurans at Barnes & Noble just like you can buy Bibles, and they can be written in English, but they always have an Arabic translation as well. Alright, Hinduism. Hinduism is the oldest organized religion that we have in the entire world, and it's actually really pretty much predominantly in India. And again, there's going to be Hindus across the entire world, but the only place with a Hindu majority is India. And it's going to be a little strange. It's a little hard to wrap your heads around. We teach it to you as polytheistic. Remember, poly means many. But it's really this concept of henostic or even monotheistic. And what that means is that they have all these gods. Like, here are pictures of a lot of the Hindu gods. There are hundreds of Hindu gods. But technically, just as all people belong to the universal spirit, every soul belongs to the universal spirit, so then does every god. And that every single one of their gods is just a different incarnation. It's just a different form of the same god. Alright, so they believe in reincarnation. They believe that your soul is reborn into different people after you die. And that your thoughts and your actions, every single thing your body ever does, every single thing that your brain ever thinks, is going to be sort of weighed at the end of each lifespan, and they add up all the positives, and they add up all the negatives, and it determines where you're going to go in the caste system. And we've talked about the caste system a lot. The caste system is essentially a triangular system of the social structure, which your original soul was born into this section, which is essentially the peasants and the farmers, and then there's a hierarchy system of the warriors and the educated and the priest. And you can go up and you can go down, all based on your actions. And the ultimate goal is to be released from this system and rejoin with the gods. This is their symbol, the Om, which is just the symbol of Hinduism, just like the crescent moon or the cross. And that they have lots of different books. That's what's different about Hinduism, is it's so old that we don't even know who found it. So they have several different books, including what are called the Vedas and the Upanishads. There's a story called the Bhagavad Gita, which is another Hindu story. It's basically the historical tellings of all the things that the gods have done. Last one, almost finished. Buddha. Siddhartha Gautama founds Buddhism in the 6th century. This should be BCE. So he is before Christ. And he basically, Buddha was a Hindu priest, a wealthy, well-off Hindu teenager. And what Buddha does is he goes out into the world and he looks to find what suffering is and find out what the meaning of life is. Buddha is not a god. Buddha does not he's not worshipped by the Buddhists, but he also says that all those Hindu gods were not real as well. This is the symbol of Buddhism. It represents the eightfold path because it's the 8-spoke wheel, and we're going to talk about that in just a minute. Know that Buddhism is mostly Asia, and obviously, again, Buddhists everywhere, but generally China and Vietnam and the Koreas and sort of even Bangladesh, some all the way through Laos. They believe in the Four Noble Truths, which are what this picture's about. Four Noble Truths basically say life is hard, and the reason that you suffer is because you want things, and you need to try and stop suffering, and the way that you do that is by following the Eightfold Path. The Eightfold Path is simply thinking the right things, saying the right things, being mindful, and paying attention, training your mind. The teachings, they also believe in reincarnation. This is not quite the best PowerPoint I've ever done. Sorry about that. The teachings of Buddhism are based on what missionaries spread through a Hindu-controlled world. And there is no book. There's no book you need to know for Buddhism. It's just that people after Buddha, just like people after Jesus or people after Muhammad, wrote down the things that Buddha said. Alright, so that's it. Those are the 5 major world religions you need to know for World 2. I need you to have your chart completely filled out. Obviously, you can start and restart the video whenever you need to. And let me know if you have any questions.